We're going to officially kick off this quick session. It's going to last for about 30 minutes. So just a few quick housekeeping rules. If you do have any questions, please type them into the chat bar. Everybody can see the chat, so just feel free to type them in, and we'll, if you have any questions, we'll answer them as we go. So tag to document links. What we see a lot is if we think about the solution set that we're offering for the owner-operators, which is actually quite extensive. We do full-blown document control, document management, and in that arena we see quite a bit of issues with getting access to the information for the operations team and the operations and maintenance team, right? So certainly if you have a somewhat older asset, it's very difficult to get a good handle on where the information is stored, because what we're going to talk about is that a lot of the information is stored in very different places, right? So the HR forms are in a different place, the sign-off sheets to do work is in a completely different place, and the actual P&ID is in a drawing database. Some of the information is maybe stored in a maintenance management system, and all of these systems have their own interface. The connections between those systems are, if they already exist, are very poor, and there is no relationship between the information across these systems. So if you're an operations individual and you need to do some work, how do you quickly get access to all the information that's relevant for you to safely do the job that you have at hand, right? So if you look at it from a full-blown overview, where we position this is in our full stack, we manage the full-blown lifecycle for an asset. And this particular element, the searching and consolidation of data, is something that we categorize under the operations access area. So as I mentioned before, the information spans multiple discipline silos, so to speak, right? So you got a maintenance bit, an ERP database, a document management system, an engineering database, and the challenge is a little bit that from the point of view of the engineering database, they have certain requirements, which are obviously because of that particular purpose. But the flip side goes for the corporate management system. And what we see, there is a bit of overlap for the people that are in operations and maintenance with specific information needs that they have. So that's why we came up together with our partner Radial to come up with this solution for our solution stack. The other part of that, as I also mentioned a little bit, is that information is stored across a lot of different legacy systems, anywhere from paper to just analog. Kind of interesting, yesterday we had a discussion with a potential client. They had finished a project about 4 or 5 years ago, and they had used a very professional large document control system, but when they switched it off, the vendor just gave them a spreadsheet with over 700,000 records and said, okay, here's your project archive. And it literally was a dump with, and the only thing that's contained in that spreadsheet is a description of what the data is. No discipline, no categorization, no whether it's the latest as build, whether none of that information is available to them. So it's extremely difficult to make sense of what you actually have, because again, they did a fairly large project, and 750,000 files, that's a lot of information to kind of comb through if you need to suddenly swap out a pump, right? That's some of the challenges that people deal with day to day. So the solution overview that we're proposing is that we're saying, what if you could have a system that simply doesn't change the way you do your work and doesn't change where you've stored the information, but it simply reads from what you already have? All right, that would be a plus, because in a lot of conversations that we have with our customers, as soon as you start talking about process changes, then the conversation becomes inherently more difficult, because it's changing an organization is one of the most difficult things that a company runs into, right? Changing changing organizational structure, changing procedures, making sure that people adopt the new working process. And to be honest, that is one of the main reasons why we really like our solution so much, because you don't change anything. We just read from what you have, and you get an immediate ROI for the operations and maintenance people that just goes through the roof. And I kind of in the invite on LinkedIn, I kind of actually wasn't a joke, but I said in the description that what I've witnessed with a customer is that we did a demo. We showed them the power of the solution, and literally a day later, they agreed to buy the system, and it's currently up and running and in place. And implementation wasn't 6 years, but implementation was a couple of weeks, which was really impressive for them. So anyway, I'm digressing a little bit here, but it's all relevant to the message that we want to convey here. The solution is extremely smart. We connect to your existing data. We automatically detect references, and I really want to stop at this point, because the first customer that we did an implementation with, they were about to ship off 100,000 drawings to some company in India to get them all corrected and worked up and relinked and make sure that it made sense. We pretty much out of the box have proven to them that we achieve a 90% accuracy with a couple of hours of work, simply because we have such a smart artificial intelligence engine that is capable of finding the relationships automatically, that they immediately, that customer also made that decision really quickly. They almost immediately stopped the discussion with the other vendor and said, we're done. We found a software solution that's really going to help us in getting access and insights into the data that were previously, or with a lot of manual effort, were not possible, right? So the AI engine helps us to find text, symbols, patterns, labels, line lists, equipment lists. All of that information is something that we extract from the existing data that you have, whether it's a DWG, a PDF, a TIFF file, a scan image, it doesn't really matter. We determine the relevant documents and data points from the data that you have, and so what you end up with is a system that also allows you to enable consistency and completeness checks, right? So once we've loaded everything in the system, we can do things and say, all right, according to your equipment list, you have a pressure transmitter, but we can't find that thing anywhere in the documentation that you've given us. So either you're missing documentation, or that piece of equipment does not exist, but it's still actively loaded in your equipment list. Either way, that's a challenge and something you need to investigate. Whether it's true what we find or not, that's not up to us, but we point out to you as the user potential issues that you might have in the configuration that that you're actively working with, right? The other really interesting thing that we like is the user friendliness. The user training, the end user training is like 10 minutes. It's like Google on steroids. And a lot of systems nowadays, they're overly complex, they're big, they're huge, they do amazing things, but you need like a master's degree in computer engineering to kind of figure out how they work. And that's one of the things I really, really like about our solution, about the Viewport solution, is that it's truly intuitive. It's like Google. You type something in, you get a hit, you click on it, you hover over a file, and you see other hits that it found, and you move on, and you can find the information that you need. Then on top of that, there is no user licensing, and the installation is zero install. If you have a browser on an iPhone, on an iPad, on a Windows machine, on a Mac, if you have a browser, it'll work. Period. No installation, no difficult things, or none of that. So this is kind of the solution overview of how we approach a project and what the system brings to the table. So if we look at the architecture of the solution and what it does, as I mentioned in the beginning, we don't change the way you work today. if you have a system that we can read from, and we can read from almost any system that we've come across, then we import it, we convert it, we OCR, we label, we index, and we cross-reference. And so it really starts at the bottom, where we take a look at the current data sources that you have available. Many various different document management systems, just regular file shares. Maybe you have some real-time systems from ABB or Honeywell. You can integrate it with your SAP maintenance management system. We can read directly from drawings, from technical documentation, like Smart Plant P&ID, AutoCAD, etc. All of this is feeded into the system, and then it's being related to each other, so that you end up with one consistent set of your data, without having to jump in each of these various different individual solutions that sometimes they have a reasonable search engine, sometimes they don't. But you don't have to jump around to find the information that you need, right? So what does it look like? It looks kind of like this, and obviously we'll do a bit of a deep dive into the solution here to do a bit of a show and tell and demo. But it's fully touch enabled, any type of device, just browser based, very, very intuitive. Right. I'm going to skip over this. I'm going to focus on a few slides that really highlight what the system does. So one of them is cross-referencing of tag IDs. Right. So if we find V700, we're going to relate it to everything that we can find that you feed us with, right? So every type of information that you give to us, we're going to cross-reference that information to V700. So whether it's the actual P&ID, or a report, or the equipment manual, or the equipment list, or maybe something from SAP, then all of that is going to be related. And the really good thing about that is that you're going to see differences, and we're going to be able to tell you, in SAP it's called V700, but in your equipment list you call it V-700, and in the manual it's referred to as V.700. Right? And that's because of the machine learning capabilities of the AI engine. Those are the types of things that we will pick up and we'll be able to relate. Right? So we don't only do that for the tag IDs, we also do that for pretty much any type of information you have. So whether it's a line number, a document number, it almost doesn't matter what that is. So if you look for a document number, you're going to find all of the different locations where that document number is located at. Right? And then how we do the detection, this is where really some of the smarts come in, because the good part about the solution is that when assets have been shifting hands over the course of time, right? So we run into situations where an asset is 60 years old, and it has gone from one ownership to the other, from one engineering manager to the other over a couple of decades. And what you will find in the documentation that you have and the documentation that you receive is that there is a lot of small discrepancies in that documentation, right? So below here is a little snapshot that says this could be from like a manual from an EPC provider that is referring to multiple PCVs, right? So it says in the documentation 2890, 2990, but that actually means 2890, 2990, and 3090, right? Because that's something that the system would pick up. And if there's somewhere as being listed V-600/700, we understand that this reference contains a reference to V-700. And that's because of the intelligence that we have in the engine. And if you kind of think about the documentation that you have, and if you kind of glance over in your head, okay, we got documentation from this EPC provider, but we did all of the tank upgrades for this with this particular provider, and they weren't really consistent in how they name things. And when you're doing the project, is very difficult to pick up those details, and two, it's close to impossible to correct them afterwards, because the amount of volume that you have, that's going to make it really, really difficult. So keep in the back of your mind that the engine is extremely smart. It has machine learning capabilities, and it allows you to detect V700 within different variations. And it's not that we need to reprogram the system every time. The engine is learning that by itself because we've taught it, we've taught it what a process and instrumentation diagram is. We taught it what the ISO standards are for P and ID symbols. The system knows if I find a circle within their attack ID, that's a piece of equipment. If it looks like a pump, then it is a pump, and that's a number for a pump, right? I'm repeating this a little bit, but obviously cross-reference and consistency checking. Um, so if you're missing line numbers or you find documentation that's available in one document but it's not on the other, and vice versa, those are things that will automatically detect. So information that you potentially don't have, that's obviously very important to point out, right? So you got a couple of tanks laid out in a big area, and you've obviously got some pumps connected to them, but on your equipment list you have that particular pump, but that pump is never listed on any of the P&IDs that you have. That's something you might want to check on. Again, I mentioned it's user-friendly. Let me just jump ahead to a bit of the demo. So I'll just explain the basics using the screenshot, because that's a little bit, I kind of like the slow flow of it, so to speak. So once you log into the system and you've selected a certain asset, then you kind of, on the left-hand side, here's my mouse. On the left-hand side, you can find your, like a navigation structure, right? And the navigation structure allows you to kind of find the documentation in a way that you're familiar with. So we're going to take a look at what you currently have and how it's organized, and organize it in a very similar fashion. So people that are looking for stuff, they don't have to learn a new structure, right? And that's located within these files here. Then below that, you can immediately jump, if you're just looking for a certain tag, you can immediately jump to a certain tag. So if you want to know more about something with pressure, you click on P, and that opens up to the further categorization. You click on it, you search for it, and boom, you got the information of that particular tag. Then in the top, you can obviously do your kind of Google on steroids type of searching, and it will show up with a couple of hits. If you've opened up a drawing, then once you're looking at the drawing, it automatically creates these types of hotspots. So when you hover over these particular areas, they're going to be highlighted, and from there you can jump to the information that's relevant. So if you would like to do like a virtual walk down of the line, you just click on this link, and boom, it jumps to the next P&ID. That's a line that's going to walk you through that. On the right-hand side, you can see all of the different pieces of information that this P&ID is referred to. Right, so this has a relationship with with an operations manual with 3 different drawings. There's a whole bunch of tag numbers referred on it. There's a bunch of potential references that you might not be aware of, and we also allow you to do a bit of a QC process, right? So how does it work in real life? So let me just open up the demo. So if you're in the system when you log in, you're going to see, the first thing you're going to see is the ability to select what we call a certain asset. So this is, let's say, the Houston plant, or the New York or New Jersey plant, or if you've got multiple plants, and obviously you can jump to a specific plant. So we support multiple assets with one system. That's one thing to keep in mind. Then if you're in the screen, you kind of select the asset that you're looking for. And when you do that, the system opens up. It kind of shows you a nice little picture of what it is about, most files that have been updated recently. So if you're interested in some of this, you can take a look at that. Another interesting capability is that we have a subscription engine. So if you're in operations and you want to be updated automatically for changes that are going on for a certain area, then you can automatically get an update whenever something changes in that particular area, right? Now, in the top left here, you see the typical navigation structure. So I can click on, let's say, drawings, and then I can click on P&ID, and then I see all the P&IDs listed. Or I could jump to, let's say, the example that I was just giving, P. So this is likely some type of pressure valve, and I can click on no pressure valve. Or if I want to find something, I can just start typing something with a T. I know it's an R, TR, or maybe dash 1. Not sure if this is bringing something up. Oh, well, it actually does. Temperature recorder, B001. I can jump to that particular element. Right. So if I look at a certain drawing, and this is where the real magic is, that drawing then obviously opens up. And again, this is a zero install. You need to have a browser, and that's it. If any modern browser will work. Sorry about that. Any modern browser will work, and what you can see over here, when I start moving my mouse around, you can see that these elements are being highlighted, which means that the system actually found something that this is related to, right? So even, it's not completely visible, but even like the pieces of equipment here, they're all being highlighted, so I can click on it. Now I've got this little icon here. This is for demo purposes. We show this, but you can see that it found relationships with all of these pieces of equipment. The ones that are yellow, they're kind of questionable. The ones that are red, we know that it's a potential reference, but we can't find it anywhere else. So this gives you a good indication of what the system does, kind of, well, almost out of the box. Right? So if I click on it, then that's going to allow me to take a look at this particular reference. Right? So this would go to the next drawing. Oh, shoot. This is going to show me potential reference to the next drawing. And then if I wanted to open up that drawing, I can simply click on it and it brings me there. On the right hand side, this is where some of the real magic is. I can see that this particular PID has a relationship with 3 other drawings, 53 tag numbers, and an operations manual. Right? So that's very interesting, because from here I could say, well, I'm actually interested in this piece of equipment here. And I can click go to. I can see that the information then actually shows up, showing you what the information is, either from SAP or Maximo or whatever the maintenance management system, or whatever the other database is that keeps track of your pieces of equipment, right? And the other thing that this does, and this is a bit of a bad example, but if you have multiple source systems, that's the reason why you see pressure indicator twice here. But if you have multiple source systems, it would show you the actual source system, so SAP or Maximo or Excel or whatever it is, and it would also show you the differences between those, because maybe you've called it pressure indicator in SAP, but in Maximo or on the Excel spreadsheet it's called PI for pressure indicator, right? And you would be able to see that there's differences like that, and you can actually do reports on those types of differences of data that you're storing in multiple source systems. Right. So the system is very good at analyzing data, reviewing the data, and keeping track of the data. Right. So it's not available here. The other thing that it's highlighting is potential references. So this goes into the quality checking and the quality purpose of the system. So the potential references actually show you potential references, but what it's telling me is that we found something that matches the patterns that we've automatically recognized, but we can't find it anywhere else. According to everything we know, this should be a valid document number, but that document number doesn't exist anywhere where we have access. That's obviously a potential issue, right? And the same goes for the tag number. So we think that this is a potential tag number, but it's nowhere referenced. You don't have any equipment on it. It's not listed in any manuals. It doesn't exist. So it's something you might want to take a look at. Right? So as a quick example, if I wanted to jump to, let's say, the operating manual, I'll get a brief screenshot, and then it jumps to the actual operating manual. And even better, if you're looking at it from a piece of equipment, it will jump to that piece of equipment that you're referring to. Obviously, things like in PDF, right, bookmarks work, and the thumbnail pages, all of that stuff is simply working and will absolutely be very helpful if you're doing that. Another really nice trick, which a lot of people take some time to kind of get used to, is the ability to kind of have your breadcrumb down in the bottom here. So if you want to jump back to where you got started, I just want to take a look at all the drawings, boom, and it simply goes back to that overview. If you want to go back to the original drawing and not the manual where you got started, here's that original drawing, right? So kind of to close this session out, one of the really interesting features of this software is the ability to integrate with real-time systems. And so if you have a real-time system installed that we can integrate with, and we integrate with a couple of major ones, then if you found a drawing of your interest, then we can automatically link and show you the real-time information that is currently going on in a plant. So for somebody in the field who has access to this using his phone or just an iPad, this obviously is very, very useful because they walk around in the field, they see an issue, they want to do a quick check, they don't have to go back, drive back to the operations room and see what the current values are, and they can see it from a systems point of view, right? So they can literally follow that line and see, okay, I've got an unsafe valve over here, which is connected to this, click, it jumps to the next drawing, and you can start investigating where the potential issues are. So with that, if you zoom in a little bit, you can open up that piece of equipment, and you have the ability to show a real-time trend of what the values are currently in the plant, right? So with that, I'm almost at the end of this presentation, and for the folks that are kind of interested in, okay, well, this this really looks interesting, and that it's a very intuitive system, as you've seen. What I would really like to highlight is that it's very easy to get started. This is not a huge, complex system. It's something that we deploy in a couple of weeks. It's nothing like months and months of works. It's a couple of weeks. We take a look at your data. We analyze the data. You don't have to do any data cleansing. We can extract a lot of the information from your data, from your existing title blocks, from your equipment list, from all of the information that you have to enrich the data that is going to be stored in the system, right? Quick wins, obviously, load the system up with P&IDs, manuals, procedures, etc., and you'll I'm thinking about the words, but it's truly amazing the feedback that we're getting when we do real-time demos with people and when we start loading their data in the system. The amount of feedback that we have that is so positive is not anything that I've seen. And we literally get comments from existing customers and potential customers. This is one of the best tools that I've seen in the last decade. This could be a real game changer to us. Those are the types of comments that I walk out from meetings. And so if there is some type of interest, please take a look at it. A good way to get started is a bit of a one-on-one conversation. Send us some of your data. We'll load it up. We'll give you the keys to a demo box, and you can see how it works. With that, I'm going to open it up for some Q&A. I am exactly at 30 minutes, which is what I promised to do. Any questions from anybody? All right, we got one question from Harel. No questions. All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, with that, if there's no further questions, first call, last call, no more questions. Excellent. I'm going to close the meeting. We're going to make the recording available. And thank you for your time. And perhaps talk to each other in the future.